We have an exciting presentation around our Great Jobs KC skills-based training program. And today we're going to take you guys beyond the credential and really show you how a whole scholar model can support and strengthen persistency, completion, employment, and long-term stability. Persistence is not a student outcome, it is a system outcome. And when we often think about persistence, we often relate it to being only a personal quality, and so we will normally ask questions such as, was that student actually ready? Was that student motivated enough? Was that student organized enough? But the reality is that persistency isn't necessarily just a personal quality. It really leans into the system that is wrapping its arms around that student, right? Because the system itself is supposed to be designed to make sure that expectations are being communicated effectively, that risks are able to be identified, that information is flowing the way that it should flow. And ultimately, from a good system, you should be able to tell if that support that was provided to the student actually helped, right? And so we want to move away from this question of, was the student ready, and really lean into the question, is your system ready for your students? Those are underlying reasons why scholars tend to fall through what we will soon talk about cracks, right? But when we talk about workforce development in general, we have to first start with addressing the hidden workforce challenge, right? And so this is the assumption that access to training is not the same as economic mobility, right? And we know that these two things do go hand in hand, but we often learn and find that many traditional workforce development programs only focus on that access. They're not focusing on the mental health. They're not focusing on the housing. They're not focusing on the other resources and needs and barriers that their population that they're serving may be dealing with. More than 2/3 of working age adults in Kansas City in particular do not have a bachelor's degree. That's a ton, right? That is a ton. And so this concept of workforce development is especially important for adult learners because it addresses this assumption that access to a seat does not automatically mean access to mobility. Well, first, that limited support, right? So we just talked about a lot of the support is given at the beginning stages of a student entering the program, but at some point that tends to kind of filter out. And then reactive intervention, right? So a lot of intervention doesn't actually take place unless a problem arises, right? So maybe we've noticed attendance changes, or we've noticed that a barrier is now there, right? And so that intervention is more reactive than proactive, and not really allowing enough time or opportunity for us to address those situations before they arise. Third is the minimal employer engagement, right? So again, just like in that traditional workforce model illustration, graduation equals success. And then that's it, right? But really, as we'll talk about today, graduation is just one checkpoint on the journey. And so with the minimal employer engagement, oftentimes employers are not brought into the conversation until the scholar completes and graduates, which oftentimes is way too late. And we have been very intentional about building a collaborative workforce ecosystem. And so Great Jobs KC's current ecosystem combines 151 partners across different sectors, so training partners, employer partners, community organizations, and our college network. But the strength in this ecosystem isn't really about the numbers that you see here, nor about the entities that make up that number, although we are very, very grateful for our partners, right? Like I said, we could not do this work without them. But really what really gets the biggest highlight here is the coordination that it takes to bring all of these different parts together, these different partners together for the benefit of the scholar. As you continue to think about Great Jobs KC and our whole scholar model, really think about these 5 pillars, because these are the 5 pillars that our program is really built around. And so those 5 pillars, again, are intentional intake and career alignment, right? So early on, we want them to come into this program thinking about their career and building a pathway of readiness for them, as well as an early support plan. The second pillar is that scholar advocacy and that barrier removal, right? As you can imagine, removing barriers is only going to help them be able to complete, but also we do that through those one-on-one relationships with our scholar advocate and our career resource managers. Third are those professional and life skill development workshops that we do require that they must complete even before they go into their training site. So if they don't complete those, they can't move on to the next step. And that is all about building those workforce and workplace behaviors. Fourth is the employer network and career launch. And the fifth is that 1 year post-employment coaching.
Because this is one that people know I'm really passionate about, because I love it when you can help someone know what the unspoken expectations are. Unspoken, right? Because we go on with the assumption, well, if everything's all figured out, then that persistence will follow. No. We may have some unspoken expectations, especially when our scholars or learners get into that training program as well. Unspoken expectations. We go ahead and set them at the beginning. So not only do they know what they're getting themselves into, but they also know moving forward, as I keep going, this expectation will continue to be set.
But that workplace readiness is what helps a scholar enter them, contribute while they're there, and ultimately stay, right? Because we want them to have a household sustaining career. So again, we don't just see graduation as the only success metric. We track data along the way. And so that's through engagement, different touch points, attendance, responsiveness of the scholar, barriers, of course, that we talked about, different intervention techniques and resources, and then of course the expected outcomes that we are wanting to see. And so the purpose of data is not only to report those outcomes, but it is also to identify the risk so that we can activate, right, in real time when there's still time to provide help. And it's really through, again, that ecosystem, getting real-time data, right, as scholars are progressing, early intervention, and all those wonderful things. So what we can do is encourage students and get them on a career roadmap so they can see where their potential is in terms of career progression and advancement that can hit them closer to that 45,000 or beyond. It's boosting self-esteem, confidence, and ultimately inspiring them to make legacy in their own life. And it's not really just the work of Great Jobs KC, it's really the work of Kansas City's amazing stakeholders and partners and organizations that are already doing the work, have been doing the work. It's more so just us coming in the fold and linking arms and figuring out how can we do it together.